I'm Heather Grabbe. I run the Open Society European Policy Institute in Brussels. What we do is to lobby the EU to improve human rights, democracy, justice, and also increasingly make digital transformation and climate action work for the benefit of people around the world. A typical day for me would be starting with a meeting with staff to talk about management issues, how we're going to strategize a particularly tricky issue, how we're going to deal with a budget problem, the usual stuff that you have to deal with in most organizations. And then to talk to a policymaker or two, for example, an MEP or an official, about an important issue that we're trying to push at EU level. For example, something about the rule of law in the EU, or trying to get action on some aspect of climate policy. And then I also might do a public presentation, for example, chairing a panel or speaking on a panel. And I would definitely be meeting members of my team who are busy doing the advocacy out there on the range of issues that we cover, everything from human rights to economic justice to digital and climate. The skills I need to succeed are to work through a massive information and pull out the key points and really see what are the implications for the real world. And I did that in academia and think tanks, where I worked for more than a decade. I've also done that in policy, where I worked in the European Commission. And I do it now in my job of running OSEPI in Brussels. The key thing is to be able to see the wood for the trees, to understand what that wood might look like on the map and how it relates to the other things around it. And then also to be able to get down to the individual tree level and understand what's going on in a particular decision-making process or around a particular decision maker. But to see the historical trajectory, to see the long-term view as well. I think that's the most important ability that I've had to learn to do. I've had an unusual career path. It hasn't been a ladder at all. There's been no career ladder. It's been more of a snake, having to take twists and turns as they came and find opportunities. So I started in consultancy, in fact, having to work through masses of information and pull out key points for decision makers. Then I actually worked at Chatham House here in London, and I then went into academia, where I did my doctorate and teaching and research, particularly on enlargement of the European Union to Central Eastern Europe, which was a really fascinating topic. I then found an opportunity to join the European Commission to work on the very topic that I had done so much research on. And suddenly the world of theory collided with the reality of policymaking, and I had to review much of what I thought I knew after a decade of research. That was a really fascinating time, and I learned an enormous amount from working in the European institutions. And then I had the opportunity to join Open Society and work in a philanthropy, a particularly political philanthropy that aims to improve the state of the world by funding civil society, and also doing advocacy work, which is the part that I'm responsible for in Brussels, of trying to change EU policies, laws and institutions in order to serve the people, both in Europe and also in the rest of the world, better. I studied politics, philosophy and economics at Oxford, and then later I did a doctorate in politics, European politics. And I think PPE at Oxford was a fantastic preparation for the real world, in the sense that you have to write 2 essays a week on new topics, things you've never thought about before, really big issues. In the case of philosophy, things that humans have been pondering for 2,000 years. And you have to try and come up with some good points to make about them, and preferably something a bit original, an original argument, which is often a tall order when it comes to subjects that everybody from Aristotle to Machiavelli has been thinking about. Plus, of course, economics and understanding the way that systems and institutions work. These were all really useful skills. But I think the most useful skill was essay writing, was having that twice weekly deadline where you've got to try and look at an issue and learn enough about it that you can produce something coherent late at night, often after too much coffee. And that's a skill that you will need throughout your whole career. While I was at university, the world changed very fundamentally. The Cold War came to an end, the Berlin Wall fell, and I saw a really positive change to a system that seemed unchangeable happening before my very eyes. So 1989 was for me a really life-changing moment and a career-shaping moment. And I really found it a fascinating area to work on post-communist Europe and on a part of the world that was changing so rapidly and radically and fundamentally. And it was also a period of great optimism when the liberal order seemed to be the only order, the only possible political order. And that's also something that shaped me and which I've had to then revisit and rethink as politics has changed dramatically in the 3 decades since then. So that was a very memorable event, it's something that came home to me personally about it was when I was working on how the European Union might open to the post-communist countries of Central and Eastern Europe at Chatham House in the mid-1990s. And I was a young researcher, a junior research fellow. I was in the middle of writing a book about it. And I remember one of the gruff old diplomats, one of the members of Chatham House, saying to me at an event, "What are you working on, dearie?" And I explained, enlargement of the European Union and what, Poland and Hungary, they might join the European Union. Really? That's a marvelous career. It'll keep you going forever because they'll never join, was the riposte of this diplomat. And I remember thinking, but you're wrong. They are going to join, and it's fundamentally going to change things. And that encounter was quite useful because throughout my career, I've often had people say, look, this will never happen. This is not going to change. This system is something that we simply have to live with. And I saw it change in front of my eyes. I saw 1989 happen. I saw 2004 happen when these countries did join the European Union. And then I worked with many people from Central Eastern Europe in the Commission and afterwards. So I have a fundamental optimism that systems, well, I know that they do change, and I have an optimism that they can change for the better. And I think climate is the next really big system change moment that's about to come. And I'm optimistic that climate change is pretty grim and it's very serious, but the system can change when the dynamics are right, when the stars are aligned, and we can do things to make that happen. One of the biggest challenges is being taken seriously as a woman, particularly as a young woman who's got lots of ideas and enthusiasm in a room full of men who've seen it all. And I can now understand, being older, having more experience, why people who've seen it all become rather cynical and don't believe that change is possible. But I think it's very important to remember that your ideas are the mark of your thinking, the quality of your ability to analyze, and putting them out in a room full of skeptical people who knock them down is no shame at all. I remember getting a very useful piece of career advice from an older woman, very experienced, and she said, never ever start a sentence with "I feel" or "I think." You just state what it is that you feel or you think, and you'll be taken much more seriously. Now, I think times have changed a bit since then. Women are taken more seriously, which is a very good thing. And the voice of young people is now considered to be not naive, but often a voice of wisdom. And so these are advantages now, which it must be used to the full. But this idea that you can state things as, this is the world as I see it, without even saying, I feel, or I think, or I see it this way, that's quite a useful presentational skill. Another really A very useful piece of advice that I received was also from an older woman who said, don't imagine your career just going in one direction, starting from here and simply going forward on a line. Women have long and interesting lives in particular, and new opportunities will come up that may not even have existed 5 years ago. So just follow things as they come up and you'll have a really interesting life. And that I found to be true. I think Luc van Middelaar's book on Europe is great, and a longer historical work about Germany's role in Europe, Timothy Garton Ash's book In Europe's Name. These are great to sort of understand the zeitgeist of the European Union in particular. But I would actually point to history and biography as fantastic ways of understanding from the inside what motivates the people who work in Europe and who created the European Union and who still motivate it today. So this Charles Grant's book, The House That Jacques Built, which is his biography of Jacques Delors, gives a really fascinating account of the life of one of the great makers of Europe, and also with a great eye for how systems work and how the dynamics work between institutions. And I would also recommend a much older biography of someone who lived much earlier, Duff Cooper's biography of Talleyrand. Talleyrand was a French diplomat who was at the Congress of Vienna. And although he lived through the French Revolution, a very different period, the skills that he brought to bear as a diplomat and how he managed to forge a career from being an aristocrat to being a bishop to being a statesman and a diplomat is a really fascinating look at how people build careers in turbulent periods in European politics. And it's very entertainingly written.